Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Holly Porter is an international speaker and creator of 11 startups. She embodies resilience and perseverance. As a 13-time best-selling author and dedicated philanthropist, she emerged stronger after challenging a 70-day battle with COVID-19, becoming a living testament to resilience. Holly also leads a nonprofit supporting the long COVID community, demonstrating her commitment to making a positive impact. Her infectious joy and wisdom inspire hope, proving healing is possible after life's toughest battles. Through her diverse achievements and philanthropy, Holly continues to motivate countless lives, showing that adversity can be overcome with strength, positivity, and generosity. Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lance. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, 100%. Before we get into what you do now, I ask every guest this. Tell us how you got here. Are you from a family of entrepreneurs? The first, where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from?
I am from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandpa was a brick block mason. And so my dad took over his company and I started working at his company at 12, earning my school clothes money. My dad taught us very well to do these things. And I learned early on that I didn't want to punch in a clock and I didn't really want to work for anyone else. So I've always been an entrepreneur. My mom was more of a homemaker, but she also, catered weddings and she was an interior designer. So we always worked side by side with them in their own companies. So it's all I know. Mostly.
Oh, that's fantastic. And the reason I asked that question, just so the audience is kind of refreshed about it, is because I've always been like, I'm the opposite. Like my mom and dad were not. They were 9 to 5 people, and it just drove me insane. And I saw the freedom that other people had, and I expected everybody to be like me. But I'm finding that there's actually it's about pretty good balance actually. So that's fantastic. So on that entrepreneurial tip, you started 11 startup companies, and that's no small feat. I think I'm on number 5 of my own, right? So I totally get it. Like that's amazing. Can you share some of your most negative business experiences in those 11 startups?
Oh, wow. I like to focus on the positive, but the negatives, well, sleepless nights, employees not doing what they need to be done. So you have to pick up the pieces. Juggling. I have 8 children. So we had, my husband and I combined, I had 4, he had 4, but we had custody of all of them. So we were juggling these businesses. We always had at least 3 or 4 at a time. So we were juggling those with 8 kids in the house. 7 actually lived in the house at one time and they were teenagers. So we had all their things going on. We lived 20 miles out of town. I'm way into philanthropy. So I was in Rotary. So I did all the service stuff and AYSO soccer with 4 kids playing at a time on 4 different fields in 4 different locations. So I think that's the negatives, is just juggling, just figuring out how your time is best spent and where it's going to go.
Do you think experiencing that negativity in terms of just trying to juggle all the things and provide a work-life harmony? I like to use the word harmony instead of balance. What was the lessons you learned? Like, I'm sure you had to grow from there, and maybe you were just more concerted with your time and more like there was more intentionality with it.
You do. I learned a lot of lessons and I'm still probably looking back going, wow, I could have done that better. Especially as a parent, being present is so important to me now, where back then, oh, I showed up at that soccer game, but I was also a real estate broker and I had a full-time salon and spa. So I'd be on the phone on the field doing deals while I'm watching my kid's soccer game. That's not really being present. So those lessons are still being looked at and going, oh, okay, I would have done that a lot differently. But with what we had on our plate, looking back, I don't know how. It's figuring out those skills of how to juggle that and how to take your time and what's the best use of it. I did have a lot of time suckers in my life, especially with the salon and spa, because beauty means a lot to women and they're first. They don't give a crap what you have going on. They don't want you canceling their appointment, especially when you're booked up for a long time. So just juggling those type of things was lots of lessons learned there.
I'm sure, yeah. How about your most positive? I would love to hear some positive experiences you had with those 11 startups.
I think just the people. I'm about relationships, and all the people that I was able to meet. There were so many people that I meet, like through my philanthropy work and my businesses, that I'd run into them, and it was embarrassing because you're like, dang, I don't know which company brought me to them or what conversation. So I would mostly just listen to what they'd have to say, and they usually give me a clue, and then I'd clue in. Or I'd say, forgive me, I can't remember your first name. Will you please, and who you are? I mean, like, I recognize you, but I don't know your name. I think just figuring out how to take a negative into a positive too. That learning the resilience skills is another thing I think that was a positive to come out of that, which helped me later with all my challenges.
Oh yeah, sure. How many of your startups failed, and how many made it past the startup stage?
Hmm. Um, I don't think any of them actually failed. Mm, I I moved on. I like change, unlike a lot of people, and I like what I'm doing I like to be happy with what I'm doing. And when I wasn't, I moved on. So I think I only shut down one business. And I really didn't shut it down. I moved away, and then I owned the building. And so I put another business in there for a while. But that was when I was doing some hair, but I was still doing real estate, and I just moved to another town. So it made it hard to commute and things. So I guess that business I shut down, but it was successful. I had it for almost 20
Yeah.
years.
So
Yeah.
you weren't taking them, and I'm just, there's a genuine question. Were you taking them, and it sounds like maybe you weren't taking them and then selling them and then offloading them that way. It was,
Yeah.
you would build them up and they would work. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I did. I had a fundraising company back when they were doing your cookie dough and suckers and jerky in schools. So my
Hmm.
business has kind of followed my kids' ages. Like, I had a very successful daycare when they were younger, and then I had a preschool, and then I had a children's clothing store. And so as they grew up, my business has changed with them so I could be flexible a little bit. And then I would move, if I moved from Utah to Las Vegas for a while, then I would do different things there. Um, I so I sold, yeah, I only really sold a couple. So I guess I had my kids' clothing store. I did close down. I was in the middle of a divorce. I had 4 children. I was driving 100 miles a day back and forth with them every day and working this business. And the business was paying itself from the day one, which is really unusual. So it was okay, but I was always ahead of my time. About 2 years in a lot of my companies, when I would start them, it was just like people didn't catch on. It was a kids resale store back, this is 20 something years ago. And people where I lived just didn't catch on to it. So it paid its way, but I decided to move back to Las Vegas, and then I just set a date. I put it up for sale. If it sold, fine. If not, fine. I just moved it and moved my stuff and moved to Las Vegas. So
Yeah. How did all of them make them past the startup stage? And I want to clarify what I would define, and most people I think
yeah.
define in the entrepreneurial space of what the startup phase is. It's that first 7 years.
Probably not all of them, because the kids' clothing store I had less than 2. That was probably
Okay.
my shortest. Daycare I probably had 7 or 8. Preschool I didn't have that long. We have a concrete company. My husband's done concrete for over 37 years. He's had a business probably over 30. Um, and then my salon 20. Real estate, I'm still a real estate broker. I've been doing that for 20. So most of them, I guess only a couple. Sorry, I don't know if that's 11. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, that's all good. That's all good. It's all good. I think I've had 2 fail, so it totally makes sense. Like, you're
Yeah.
not gonna knock it out of the park every
Well,
time.
the two I have right now, I've been working on for just about 2.5 years since uh my my whole coma story and when I
Hmm.
was sick and I got told to do these. So it's a software company. So I've never had a tech company.
Interesting.
That's all new for me. That's like learning a new language. So that's been my main focus. And then the nonprofit, of course, for long COVID, which I was also told to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's move into that. How did your experience with COVID-19, your near-death experience, and your coma change your perspective on life and wellness?
Oh, completely. I was pretty healthy. Well, I was healthy before. I was on no medications, walked in the hospital on nothing, walked out with 12. I'm drug free now. And I worked hard to get that way because for me, I just more holistic side of things. And they gave me everything. I think most of my challenges now health wise are from all the drugs that they pumped me through, but I'm alive and I was intubated twice and I had a trach and I had sepsis and a couple other infections that I can't pronounce that should have killed me. So the fact that I walked out of there was a miracle in itself. I had whatever anyone believes. I mean, for me, it's God. Whatever anyone else believes. So when I say that, that's who it is for me. But I was in a coma, self-induced or medically induced. I mean, sometimes paralyzed, sometimes not, but about 32 days of the 70, they would do that to get you to heal. I was on a ventilator about 52 days, including the trach. That's also ventilation. It's just moved from your throat to your, or to your mouth to your throat. But I had out of body experiences, lots of those. Those are lots of shows. I had a spiritual transformational experience, which I thought was a near death until I got educated about a year after I was healing. And then I had a near death experience. But the two things I was basically told by God to do was the concept of the software company was just for me. And I was told not to partner with, I just pitched on the day I had COVID. I was sicker than a dog. It was the day I tested. And I pitched a company that I wanted to work with and partner with, and it had a billionaire backing them. So money would have never been the issue. And I got told not to do that, that wasn't the best thing to do, that it would take me longer, but don't do that. So I listened, and lots more challenges have come up because of that, because it's something new.
Yeah.
And then I was told to start this nonprofit for long COVID. Well, number one, I didn't know what long COVID was. I didn't even think I'd ever get COVID, right? And especially almost die. But the ironic thing about that, I always wanted a nonprofit and I supported so much philanthropy, but nothing ever landed. And then I get told to do this. I had a magazine at the time that was part of one of my companies. And it was my writers, I wouldn't even let them say the word COVID. We would not print that in my magazine because I was that adamant I was not going to give COVID that energy.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah.
This was in 2021. So we were well into the second year of COVID. And I was like, they'd come back with a quote from somebody. And if it had the word COVID in it, go back, get it different. I just wouldn't. And now here I have a nonprofit for long COVID. Nonprofit or the long COVID, a lot of people don't understand. Well, first of all, I like to do things that are fun, and it's not fun. It really isn't. I mean, you're serving people, you're helping people. Yes, you're making the awareness, but nobody wants to hear about it. They shut you down. They don't want to hear that word. Everybody wants to move on. Well,
Sure.
There are now over 100 million documented cases of long COVID. We're never going to run out of people to help and serve. People have no idea there's that many people suffering.
And what is your definition of that? Is it your 70-day stint, or is it post the 70-day for anybody who has a stint like that?
Yeah, no. I had a guest on my podcast that I have one for long COVID, and his wife was 4 months in the hospital. So she was bad like me. She was worse.
Yeah.
She had a baby while she was in there on a ventilator. Like, it's nuts. Her story was amazing. He had COVID, tested positive, never had any symptoms, but he has long COVID. So people have to understand, if you're having some health issues that all of a sudden came up, trace it back, and it more than likely started happening since you got COVID. So 200 symptoms are linked to it, which is everything.
Yeah.
Every organ was affected. So a lot of the autoimmune is a lot of people's issues. If you had anything dormant, I'm seeing tons more cancers, Alzheimer's, dementia, everything just went 10 times faster. So if you were prone to maybe get it, like I ended up with a whole list of things, but rheumatoid arthritis, I was probably, it was dormant. I had some little hints maybe, but it may never have manifested, and COVID caught it on fire.
So it essentially is like, it doesn't, like, let's say I had COVID for 3 days back in the day.
Yeah.
And then if I experience symptoms that just continue to linger after that, that's what we're talking about. Like
90 days, I would say. If 90 days you were still had the fatigue and you still had the muscle soreness and you still had those kinds of issues, you probably do have long COVID, or something manifested like an autoimmune. You got fibromyalgia, you got rheumatoid arthritis. Since you had COVID, more than likely it's a long COVID case.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for, I'm curious. I mean, that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, just to ask you that specific question. Let's go back. Let's go back to the faith part. What would you consider yourself before you had this transformative coma journey where you had near-death experiences. You're literally talking to God. What were you before that? And then what would you define yourself afterwards in terms of faith?
Excuse me. I would say I was way more religious than and now I feel like I'm more spiritual. So before a little more religious and spiritual, now I would say more spiritual than religious. I think it changes you in what you see. Like most people, oh yeah, sorry, long COVID symptoms.
Okay.
Most people wanted to stay. If they had a near death, a lot of people wanted to stay there because the feeling is heaven to say, hey, and they love that. They love the way everything is, the energy, there's no pain. And the people that are told to come back, that's why we're here. That's why we come back. Most of us got told to come back, or that it wasn't our time and we needed to go back, or we needed to do this or that. And so I hope that answered it.
I think so. Yeah. Well, kind of. I mean, so were you a Mormon, a Catholic, a Baptist before this? Religious to me
Yes.
means I'm a practicing Catholic. So I say I'm
Yeah.
very religious because
Yes.
I'm a practicing Catholic.
Yeah. So I'm in Utah, so predominant Mormon. I was raised Mormon, all my life. And I still am. Just
Okay.
I feel like I'm just more to the spiritual side than the religious side.
Gotcha. Well, very interesting. I mean, it's phenomenal that you're here. I mean, it truly is a blessing. And I love that you are sort of maybe just paying attention to more of the details. I would actually say for me, it was the opposite. Like I would be the opposite was like, I'm more spiritual than religious. And then in 2020, that kind of all shifted for me where it's like, no, now I would say I'm more religious, yet at the same time spiritual. And I think for the spiritual people, it's, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if it's different for you, is like, you're looking at all the little details and finding the providence, just like you did when you literally heard from God and he said, don't do business with this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not always the best listener. So it's really taught me those skills. My husband taught me patience skills, and the near death taught me listening skills.
Yeah. Amazing. What is the core message or philosophy that guides your work then now in the world of advocacy?
Oh, wow. So the message that really goes back to the message I got in my near death. And it was love them where they're at. And I will share, I knew the love part, but the love them where they're at, I didn't remember. I had last no December of 23, I had my friend do a hypnosis session on me because I'm writing a book about things. And I felt like the near death, I had all the others figured out, I remembered, but the near death, there was some gaps and some missing. And out of integrity, I wanted the story to be right. And I said, will you hypnotize me just for the near death experience so I can see where I'm missing some things? Well, the end result, there were some amazing things. That's a whole nother show in itself that would give you goosebumps. But the amazing thing is that message was clarified. Love them where they're at. And that was so profound to me to remember that piece of it that I had forgotten. And I know why, almost know why. After you come back out of that kind of experience, you would think, I'm from a huge family. So we have a big family, and I'm from siblings of a big family. You would think everyone would gravitate to you like, oh my gosh, my mom almost died, or I almost lost my sister, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exact opposite.
Interesting.
Almost, besides some really close friends and my husband, and a couple siblings, and my dad, I felt so alone. Like I felt deserted. I was going through the hardest times in my life trying to heal.
Yeah.
I was dealing with a situation with a daughter of mine who's an addict, losing her kids for the third time, which
Oh,
I had
goodness.
almost raised.
Mm-hmm.
I was dealing with DCFS, hiring attorneys, fighting a brother for custody of my 2.5-year-old grandson. So I cried every day. I'm not a crier. Every day. It was so upsetting. I know it put me probably a year off of my health journey, getting better, because stress just does that. It was the worst time. I prayed so many days. I wish I would have died. Why did you save me to put me through this hell? Like, what is the purpose of this happening? It destroyed relationships. It was awful. I mean, I can talk about it now. I'm surprised without crying, because I just was so upsetting. So you go from this near death spiritual experience heaven
Yep.
to come down here to hell. It was like, what is happening? Honestly, I know now that the software company will be my end game. It's my retirement plan. I'm building it, scaling it, selling it. We're keeping shares in it, because what I want to do with the money it will make is the philanthropy work, and the foster system's so broken. And I have this whole list of things that I want to do with that. I wouldn't have been inspired to do most of that if I wouldn't have had that year and had to deal with the foster system and had to deal with DCFS to find out how broken it really was. And I feel like, sadly, if I have to risk, I feel like I had to risk losing a couple grandkids to save thousands maybe of other people's grandkids.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And it's good in a way. I mean, there's a balance there somewhere. So I'm still figuring some of that out, but I feel like that was kind of the purpose of me having to suffer that. Because relationships, like I said earlier, are the most important thing to me. That matters. My community matters. And I felt like all that, when you're at your most vulnerable part of your life, everything fell apart instead of coming back together.
Yeah. Isn't it? I always find it really interesting when you have this expectation and then God says, nope, the opposite. But you kept the faith, Holly. And I think that was probably part of the test. And then in hindsight, as things started to get further away from you in hindsight, then you could see sort of the plan. Cause like we're silly humans. We think we can understand this all-knowing being who is infinitely more intelligent than we'll ever be. We're just a very small fragment of that, right?
Yes.
In that kind of a way. It's just strange. I don't know how many times that's happened to you in your life, like that situation, but for me, it's just over and over again. And I have to try to keep the faith and just go, it's all going to be fine. Like, just relax.
I think people need to realize that everyone has intuition, whether they tap into it or not. And I think realizing that you have that within you and listen to your own gut. Everybody worries about so many other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And listen to yourself, like what's yourself telling you. And 9 times out of 10, it's right for me. And I know it. And I got it. So if I can share a little story here. When I did the near-death experience, when I did the hypnosis on the near-death experience, 2 things happened. There's a bunch of things that happened, but 2 things that I'll just share that stood out, that just, when I was having such a struggle, I was just coming out of all that horrible stuff that had just happened and trying to heal my heart. When you're dealing with grief from people that are living, I feel like it's worse. I've dealt with a lot of grief of people dying, but grieving people that are living is, I believe, harder. And I was dealing with that. And he said to me in this session, he said, more will be revealed to you when the time is right. And normally I got to know everything. I'm just that type of person. I don't like secret. I'm just like, nope, tell me. Do you know there's a surprise? I want to know what it is, right? So I was so at peace with that. I was like, yeah, I know that. I just knew that within, and I still know that. I know that if I would have remembered everything, it would have been so overwhelming. But the 2 things that I walked away with was when I was branding the software company, it's called Retreat R&R. I said, oh, the icon, the logo needs to have a tree in it. Like, I didn't even think about it. They didn't say why. I just said, it just needs a tree. All right, whatever. So, I don't dwell on stuff like that. So they came back and the logo had a tree with 11 leaves and 11 roots to it, which is 1111. If you go look up the significance of numerology, my birthday's also 11. Like, there were so many little things that were happening.
Yeah.
So I see this tree in my hypnosis session in front of me. That was one of the first things I saw. And it was just like, my body just went, that's why I created that without even remembering it. And then that was like the in-between place where I was in the near death. And when I went over to the light side, then I saw this matter that would form into hearts, and it formed into pink quartz, type hearts that were that color. And when I had the nonprofit gala, that was our first fundraiser, I did these ornaments that were wood that said hope on them. And inside each bag, I just intuitively knew that they needed to have a pink rose quartz heart in them. So when I go here and have this experience that I didn't remember, it was like such a blessing for me and my heart to feel like, okay, you're nonprofit and you're for profit. The two things you were really told to do, you're on the right path. Just keep going. And so I think about that on the hard days. I think about the Texas struggle. We're raising $1 million right now for development. And it's just like this learning curve. And when people are telling you after you just spent 30 grand doing something that it's not right and it doesn't look right, I mean, it's devastating. And I just have to keep saying, no, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Just keep going, keep going.
Yeah. I love it. We're running up on the half hour, Holly. You were you were exactly the guest I was hoping you would be. So I'm so glad that you reached out and we had you on the show. As we run up on the half hour, though, I ask every guest 2 questions. The first one is, going back in time and you can give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Hang in there.
Hang in there. Keep the faith.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah, I love it. Holly, if people want to follow you, they want to get in touch about your services, the nonprofit, anything, how can they do that?
The nonprofit is adventurebucketwish.org. You can go and contact us through there. My email is holly@hollyporter.com. I'm on all social media, but those are great ways to contact me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story with us. It was very inspirational, and I love that you just keep the faith. So keep the faith, Holly. Thanks for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you.
Bring me to life.